Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, Yulia. Thank you, the whole organizing team at GDG Hudson Valley. And this is, again, kudos to you guys for putting this together, this amazing DevFest. This is a manifestation of the passion and the love that you have for the community. And it's really tangible, you know, and seeing a lot of people joining, not only in person, but in virtual. Just want to give a quick shout out to Kevin. He's in the house, also a co-organizer at GDG Lawrence. Again, like you mentioned, Yulia, earlier, this is also the collaboration, how great things can happen when passionate people such as yourselves, us at GDG Lawrence, we come together for the benefit of the community and pushing them forward in the tech space. So thank you so much for putting this together.
So much so. Okay,
Great.
The floor is yours.
Awesome. So I'm going to start sharing my screen in a minute. Let me make sure that I do have those capabilities.
The chat is for you guys. Please use it for Q&A, or if you want to network or ask any specific questions.
Just wanted to see if anybody can see my screen in there.
Roman just codes.
Correct. Awesome. So those are just my contacts. I'm not going to have any slides in this session because I want to make it very hands-on, and it's going to be very interactive and engaging. You'll see me coding in real time. Yes, wish me luck. So yes, we're gonna have a lot of fun in the cloud. So that's exactly what the premise of this call is, of this session is. Again, you guys can follow me at Roman Just Codes. You can subscribe and follow on my YouTube channel, where I occasionally put videos about Flutter, cloud, all the things that I'm really passionate about. Also, I do live streaming on both YouTube and Twitch every Wednesday about Flutter. You guys can check those out. And last but not least, you guys can follow me at Dear Coders by scanning the QR code on the screen. And today's session will be about the Google Cloud. Not only I am a Flutter GDE, I am also lead organizer at GDG Lawrence. I am also a mentor for the Northeast, but I am also a Google Cloud certified professional cloud architect. And because I'm really passionate about developing applications in Flutter, developing a multi-platform application using the Flutter framework, I like to pair them up with amazing backend solutions, leveraging the Google Cloud. And that's exactly why I'm passionate about it, and I want to share my knowledge about that. So I'm going to be dropping a link on the chat, and I hope that you guys can get it as well. If any one of you wants to decides to follow along, please, you're more than welcome to. This is going to be very hands-on, very interactive. You're going to see me doing coding live. And that's exactly the premise of this session. So we're going to be learning about microservices. It's not just like hype words. So in this session, we're going to make it very, very, very hands-on. We're going to learn about the Google Cloud, build microservices in the Google Cloud. You're going to see, for example, me building Docker containers in the Google Cloud using the free tier. Even you who's watching can join the session, and you can build great stuff in the Google Cloud on the free tier, which gives you very decent and very great quotas, very decent quotas for you to do a lot of great things in the cloud for free. We're going to learn about microservices. What are micro front ends? You might hear about that. You're like, that's just a buzzword. It's just something that people put in their resume to inflate it. No, it's actually a real thing. You're going to learn about that. I'm also going to be showing you how microservices can be backed by data. What Docker containers, what are those? So we're going to learn about those as well. And last but not least, we're going to integrate those things with Firebase. Firebase is an amazing suite of services also that lives on top of the Google Cloud. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that. So great. So why don't we start right away? This is actually what we're going to be building today. Whatever you see in the screen right now is exactly what we're going to be building. So I'm going to be integrating all of these things that I mentioned: microservices, micro front ends, Docker containers, Firebase Cloud Firestore. And we're going to build this fictional e-commerce site, and you're going to see it being built in front of your eyes in a very systematic, very decoupled way, building and bringing those concepts together. So we're going to be building this fictional pest control products online store, where there is going to be like a shopping cart. People will be able to select products, and then you're going to have like this page living in the Google Cloud, and then you can access it publicly. I'm even going to be able to run it right in front of you, and you will see all that come about. So we're going to be learning again. There's no installation required because we're going to be leveraging the web. So the Google Cloud, you can actually access it through the Google Cloud Console, which is a web-based, kind of like a management web application that you can then connect to the Google Cloud, and you can manage all the resources in there. You only need a Gmail account to follow this this code lab, this workshop. Like I mentioned, we're gonna learn about microservices as a way to structure your application as a collection of services. So we're gonna be building this as microservices. Microservices are beneficial because they're highly maintainable, loosely coupled, they independently deployable, like multiple teams can work on different microservices. They can even follow like some sort of a different language stack, but they all come together to form one fully contained and fully formed application. And that's exactly what we're going to be dealing with. So that's step number one, where I've been showing you what is it that we're going to be building throughout this workshop. So we can proceed to step number two, where we're going to dive right into the session. So in step number two of this workshop, I'm showing you the overall architecture that we're going to be accomplishing. So we're going to be building all of this in the Google Cloud. Imagine a web client like your browser talking to accessing a web application. You see the application as a single unit, but behind the scenes is actually composed of multiple discrete features, each one of them developed in isolation, but these systems, services, microservices, can communicate with one another in a decoupled fashion to form the whole application. For example, the client can access the e-commerce site, but then from that e-commerce site, you're going to have like a shopping cart, you're going to have a list of products, a footer, but you see all of these can actually be separated. They can be split and distributed into discrete parts, and then each of these can be developed in isolation. Each one of these parts each one of these components is going to live in a separate container, and some of those containers are going to be talking to a database. In this case, Firebase. We're going to show you how to do that in just a minute. So this application will consist of 4 pieces: the product list, you're going to see all the products; a shopping cart, where you're going to see the items added to the shopping cart. The main site is actually what brings everything together. The footer is just something that shows you like the footer at the bottom, just like here. So this is the shopping cart. This is the product list. This is the footer. And then the main site is kind of like a shell, brings all those pieces together. So that is exactly what we're going to be building. So what are containers? What is this whole thing about Docker? So Docker is an open source platform for developing and shipping and running applications. It's a way to orchestrate and to manage containerized applications. But now let's bring it one level deeper. What are containers? Containers are a way, or like a standard unit of software that allows you to package your code and your application dependencies into a single unit that allows you to deploy it and distribute it in a very quick fashion, very reliable. You can move containers from one computing environment to another with no changes whatsoever, and your application should continue running as a single unit. Long gone are the days where people used to say, it works on my machine, but not in production. That is completely debunked thanks to containers. Containers allow you to package your application as a single unit. They're much more lightweight than virtual machines. The concept of virtual machine is usually compared with containers because containers are more lightweight. Containers share the OS kernel, while virtual machines actually abstract the hardware underneath it, but they're fully blown operating systems, and they're all encapsulated in there. So they take a lot more resources, while containers leverage the underlying infrastructure, and they consume resources much better. They make better usage of the underlying resources. So containerized applications are like separate silos. They have their own, again, like the code and the application's dependency in one single unit. And they are for example, if you talk to any one of those websites, or if you're consuming an application, it is very likely that those applications are running on containers, but it's very transparent to you. That is one of the beauties of using containers. So then where do containers come from? Now we go one level deeper. Images. We talk about images. People use sometimes containers and images interchangeably, but they're different. Containers are actually running instances of an image, but an image is kind of like the blueprint from which containers are generating. An image contains like a set of instructions and some sort of metadata, or like some sort of a contract, like a document that contains like all the information that the container, once it runs, needs to have in something that they call a Docker file. And then it's kind of like a manifest of all the things that your application needs to run, the code, the dependencies, the type, and all of that. You can create images out of other images, but if you can think of images as the blueprint from where containers get generated, and containers are actually the running version of an image, then you should be good to go. You can have multiple containers out of a single image. And that is kind of like the premise of that. So you can have distributed systems, completely encapsulated and packaged. You can deploy it on multiple, you can deploy them on premises, like on your local machine or your laptop, but you can use those same containers and you can run them on the cloud, in any cloud, AWS, a Microsoft Cloud, the Azure, you could do on Google Cloud. That is the beauty of containers, because they're very cloud agnostic and cloud independent. So that solves that issue where like you want to deploy an application, but you want to distribute it to multiple clouds. So it's amazing. And the way you package the code. So we're going to see that in a minute. So just stay with me so that we can see that. We're going to go to step number 3, and we're going to talk a little bit about Firebase. So what is the relationship between containers and then Firebase? No, there's no relationship, but they can communicate. Firebase is this amazing suite of serverless tools available on top of the Google Cloud that allows you to build robust applications, whether for mobile, web, server. You have authentication provided by Firebase. You have databases like NoSQL databases. You can have cloud storage available through Firebase. Firebase Cloud Functions. You can have features like Crashlytics that allows you to add like instrumentation to your code so that you can like log crashes on your application. You can have stuff like App Check. You can do hosting through Firebase. You see, it's an amazing set of features that you can use them in conjunction to build very robust applications without deploying any servers. In today's session, we're going to leverage one of the crown jewels of Firebase, which is Firebase Cloud Firestore. Firebase Cloud Firestore is a NoSQL document and collection database. Is very scalable, is completely serverless. It has multi-regional data replication for high availability, and it also has strong consistency, ACID transactions, atomic operations, and also has real-time data capabilities. That's exactly what we're going to be leveraging today, the real-time capabilities of this database. So documents and collections kind of like relate to a collection is kind of like a table. Documents are kind of like rows, but it's very like JSON schema-like. It's very, very lightweight. It's NoSQL. There are no tables, no relationships. So you build it kind of like that, as a collection of documents and all of that. We're going to go into that in a minute, but that is exactly the premise of that. If you can take a look and you can go deeper into what documents are, what are their build, but we're going to do it in a very hands-on way. That way you learn it much better. We're going to talk about documents, what documents are. We're going to talk about collections, which are collections are just like a list of documents. How do you create those and all of that? How do you procure them? And how can you create your own Firebase projects in the cloud completely for free? So we're going to show you that in just a minute. So let's go right into step number 4. Step number 4 is where you create your first Firebase project. I guarantee you, you don't have to pay a cent. After you finish this session, you're going to have a Firebase project completely free under the free tier, of course, which is called Spark. That is the free tier in Firebase, and you're going to be able to create a lot of good things. So we're going to go to step number 4, and now I'm going to show you how to build your own Firebase project. So the first thing that you're going to do, you're going to go to this link. On step number 4, you can follow this link. This link is going to take you to console.firebase.google.com. This is the the console, the web-based console that you're going to manage your Firebase projects. So here I'm going to split this into two so you can so we can see the instructions. I'm just going to move this over to the side, and then I'm going to bring you, I'm going to move this over, and this is where I'm going to create my project for the first time. So again, we're going to create a project for the first time in Firebase. First thing that you do, you click on this button that says, in your case, if let's say you have a Gmail account and you want to create a Firebase project, you go to console.firebase.google.com and you use your Gmail account. You're going to click on create project. In my case, I'm going to click add project because I already have a few created. I click on add project and you name your project whichever way you want. I suggest you name it something explicit. In this case, for example, G Cloud Microservices, like exactly like have it right there, for example. So you just put a name on your project. You hit continue. We're not going to enable Firebase Google Analytics for a Firebase project, but it's very useful if you want to do it in the future. You hit create, and then it's going to take a minute, but it's because it's actually deploying and it's actually creating a Firebase project on the Google Cloud. So it's provisioning some of those resources for you, and it's creating a project in the Google Cloud under the free tier, no cost whatsoever. So now you, after the project gets created, you hit continue. So once you hit continue, you see the main page here in Firebase. So one of the, remember the features that I was telling you that is available on Firebase? You have authentication, you have app check, real-time database, Firebase extensions, storage. You can talk to Google Cloud buckets through here, through Firebase. You can have Firebase hosting. You can host your own web applications and all of that. You could do cloud functions and a lot of great things. The only thing that we're going to be doing in this session is the Firestore database, which I mentioned is a NoSQL document collection database. Let's start. So how do you create a database? In a NoSQL database here in Firebase? Well, you go to the Firestore section and you're going to click on create database. If you see here, I'm still on step number 4 and I'm going to click on create database. So creating a database, what it will do is it will create that repository so as to store all your data in it. It gives you a production mode or a test mode. You select test mode, and it's going to give you like, it's going to allow you to access it for 30 days, but then after that, it's going to lock it, but you're going to have to unlock it later on. But it's still free, and you still access as an administrator. Let's hit next. Here is asking you where you want to save that. Where's the location of the database? The database could be actually in a multi-region. What happens when you select multi-region? It's going to get replicated. And that way, your users throughout the world are able to access it. Whichever is closest to the nearest location where the data is replicated, it accesses it from there. And then that way, your users have a better experience. So I'm going to select the United States, a multi-region, the United States. I'm going to hit enable. You see, I'm following the same steps here in the code lab. And then you will see how now we are provisioning a cloud Firestore database. We're going to take a look. So I was mentioning how it works in Cloud Firestore. So you create collections. Collections are nothing more than a group of documents. And documents are a collection of key value pairs that represent your data. Let me show you how to do that. So how do you create a collection? You always start with a collection. The collection is kind of like the root entity, the one that contains all your documents. So let's create a collection by very intuitively. We click on this button that says start collection. Let's put an ID. We're going to call it products. This is going to hold like our products information. You cannot add a collection without at least one document. So let's either do like an auto ID, or you create your own ID, like a unique identifier for your documents inside of the collection. So we're going to call it prod 1001, something like that. And then a document, like I mentioned, is a collection of key value pairs. Keys represent the name of the fields. Value is the content inside of those fields. You can have multiple types. You can have strings, numbers, booleans, maps, arrays, etc. My fields will be very simple. And if you could just see here, I'm going to type a name field with the value, let's say a name of a product. That is one type of key value pair that I can add to my document. I'm going to add another field called description. You see, I am going right down, and then I can just copy this value and I'm going to make it into a string. But let's say I can add another field and I'm going to make it price, but instead of making it a string, I'm going to make it a number. So you can have strings, numbers, Booleans, and all of that. My number will be 4.75. Let's say that's going to be the price of the product. And last but not least, I'm gonna have an image field. The image is gonna be like a string that represents a path to an image. Let's see if that image still exists. I just found it online. It's kind of like a set of products, like a pesticide products and stuff. So I'm gonna add that path in there. And now that I have a document, which is a collection of key value pairs, all I have to do just right here is save it. So I'm gonna save it. If you see, when I hit save, now you will see a collection being created in Cloud Firestore with one document. The document, you can see the fields right here, and that way you can create multiple documents. So that was our first document created. So this is already stored in the database as if I was doing, for example, like SQL. I'm adding like things to a row inside of a table. In this case, you're actually add documents to a collection. Let's add another document to this collection. You just scroll down still on step number 4, you're going to see two more documents that we're going to do, but we're going to do it in a very simple way. You can actually add them in bulk. You can write bulk writes into Cloud Firestore. You could also do batch reading. There's a lot of great things available in Cloud Firestore. I'm just going to add them manually so that you can get into the habit of seeing how a product gets added or how documents get created. So the next product is going to be called 1002. The names are right here. I'm just going to copy paste them. But you see, it's very, very simple to do. It's very WYSIWYG. Like, you have controls to create like the fields. You can select the values and whatnot. I can just copy paste them like that. And I can add another field if I want to. I need to make sure that my fields, the great thing is that, actually the recommended thing is that for all your documents should have the same fields and values as well as the types. Otherwise, then you're going to have like, you can have multiple fields, multiple values. Documents can have different keys and value pairs, but it's great to have like a structure so that your application now is more predictable, and the application knows what kind of information is going to consume from your database. So it's better to keep them according to, let's say, like all of them having the same schema, like the types, the names, fields, and the type of values. Is going to go a long way if you do this. So that's my second document, and you see them created there. I'm going to add one last document, and I'm going to call it just that, product 1003. And you saw me, it's very simple. I just add fields and values, and I should be all good. So I'm going to copy the last document. You see, you just add key value pairs, very simple. Add a field, you add the key, you add the value. This is a type string. And then you can add you can even add collections under a document. That's how you create like hierarchies. In this case, we're going to keep a very flat structure where our documents are just under one single collection, because that's all we're going to need for this workshop. I'm going to add my last field, which is and I need to make sure to change this to a number. Let me do it again. And then after I add my last field, that I have this additional image, I should be all set with the data that my collection requires. You see that it has a products collection with 3 documents, each document representing a type of product. So that's exactly what I'm going to be consuming in my application. So you see how simple it was. It's very simple. Now, let's say if you want to add another collection, you can add collections under a document. You cannot add a collection under a collection. You have to add a collection, then a document, and then inside of that document, a collection. I can have parallel collections that I can have. So I'm going to add, for example, one more collection, and I'm going to call it orders. This is the one that is going to feed the shopping cart, for example. And I'm just going to add a bogus order. I'm going to say order 1001. I'm just going to add like an order field with a number, and then it's going to be 1001. Let's say that's one order that a user just added. And I'm going to add like an association, for example, like a product ID. You could establish the relationships like that from one document to another by referring to their IDs, and then you can add those IDs as other fields in other documents, and that's how you could that's how you can establish like relationships and whatnot. But it's usually mostly like flat structures with a bunch of documents like this. So I'm going to save. Now I have two collections in my Cloud Firestore. I have an orders collection and a products collection. So we should be good. Now I'm going to keep it just right here because I'm going to get to this in a minute. I have my data already set in the database. Now I need to consume it from somewhere. So that is exactly what we're going to be doing now. We're going to be building now the application that is going to be reading from this application right here. So let's take a look. Let's do next. So we go to step, this is step number 5. We're going to set up now our Google Cloud environment. So this is where we're going to be running the containers, and the containers are going to is going to house like a feature of our e-commerce site. We're going to build containers, each one running one feature of our website. So let's take a look. I'm going to open another tab, and in this one I'm going to run the Cloud Shell. So I'm going to open another tab. And then if you see here, I'm actually going to do the Cloud Shell. This is just a link on what the Cloud Shell is. A Cloud Shell is a web-based terminal. Believe me, so it's a terminal that you run on the web. And it's actually a tiny little virtual machine based on Debian or Debian Linux. And you actually get for free 5 GB of space dedicated for you. So let's take a look at that. How does that work? So I'm going to go to the Cloud Shell by typing console.cloud.google.com. So anybody, you can just with a Gmail account, you can go to console.cloud.google.com and you automatically get a free tier on the Google Cloud, no cost. If you get asked for a credit card, is because there are certain features that definitely require cost. But for free, you already get 5 GB of persistent storage as a home directory that you can use it as a playground. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing now. So how do you access the Cloud Shell? The Cloud Shell, like I said, is a web-based terminal, as if you were running as if you were connected to a virtual machine via an SSH terminal, like a command line, but you're actually connected to the cloud directly. How do you trigger that? You go to console.cloud.google.com. And then if you see here at the top right corner, there's a little like terminal icon. That is how you activate the Cloud Shell. So I'm going to click in there. And what it's going to do is going to pop up a terminal right here on my browser as if I was connected to a virtual machine. And there it is. This is actually 5 GB of persistent storage of a home directory that you get for free. Google gives you that for free. And you can even do little applications in here. You can test a few things. It gives you very decent, very decent quotas for you to build like really small, cool stuff like prototypes and whatnot. So that is exactly what we're going to be doing. Another thing that I'm going to show you that is available for you in the Google Cloud as Cloud Shell is actually an editor. You can actually create you can even type code here in the Google Cloud and you can store it in your home directory. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Let's try a couple of commands just so that you can get familiar with the Google Cloud Shell. So you can type commands in the Google Cloud. You can use the Google Cloud CLI called gcloud, and you can type commands, for example, like gcloud config list project. This command, what it gives you is the name of your project. In my case, my project is called Roman Just Codes, and you can list projects and whatnot. You can have tools like GSUtil. GSUtil allows you to talk to the Google Cloud and create Google Cloud buckets. You could create cloud storage buckets using GSUtil. You can use BQ for BigQuery. You can use stuff like kubectl for like Kubernetes. You can use like so many great features in here in the Google Cloud, right through the shell at your fingertips for free. Make sure that you select the project that you're going to be using. Make sure that it is the one that you're really intended to use. So you select it through that drop down. And remember, if I select, for example, like down here, I can even see, for example, if there's any project. See, there's the Google Cloud Microservices web. This is the one that I just created. You can even select that project, and then all the things that you work on here are going to be applied to that project. So I would suggest go to your project, the one that you created in Firebase. You can actually see it through the Google Cloud. Why? Because Firebase is sitting on top of the Google Cloud, and anything that you do on Firebase gets reflected in there. That way you can even access it from here. How convenient is that, right? Great. Let's proceed. So now that you have that, you can continue scrolling down. And remember that I showed you, that I told you earlier, that not only you can use the command line in the Google Cloud, but you have a full-blown text editor which facilitates coding in the Google Cloud. So instead of doing the shell like the way we did, when the shell appears, there's a little button here that says Open Editor. I'm going to click here on Open Editor, and what this will give me is it will launch a Cloud Shell editor, a full-blown web-based IDE, so I can do my coding in here. It also gives you access to a terminal, just like the same way that I did in the Cloud Shell. So now you have like a full-blown web-based IDE. You can create code, and all of that gets stored for you locally. So I love the fact that you can do stuff like this. So let's try, for example, I have like a couple of folders in there. You can do exactly anything that you can do, like on Visual Studio Code or your local machine, but now that gets applied in the cloud. So why don't we do that? I'm gonna remove some of these folders in these files because I don't need them. So you can do commands like remove a folder. For example, like I'm gonna remove this Flask folder. I'm going to remove that web one, for example, like web and this web server. You can remove all of these, and you see you can execute all of that. I'm going to remove this file because I don't need it. See, you can do a lot of cool things the same way as if you were on a Linux environment, but it's all in the cloud. Great. So after now you've set up your machine and everything is all good and dandy, now let's proceed to set up our structure so that we can build containers. We're going to go to step number 6, and we're going to be creating that architecture. So the architecture will be folder-based. Inside of each folder, we're going to have one specific feature. So let's start by creating a folder. You can even do it through the command line. If you feel adventurous, you could do like make a directory called products, for example. And then you see how the products folder gets created here. But if you're not comfortable with that, you can just do it the same way as if you were in Visual Studio Code. You can say new folder, and I'm going to call it shopping cart. You see, we're going to have one container running products, one running for the shopping cart. We're going to be creating a folder for the footer, and we're going to be creating one folder for the e-commerce, which is going to be like the shell of the application, the one that is going to bring all the features together in one single unit. So I've created 4 different folders: e-commerce, footer, products, shopping cart. You saw how easy it was. Everybody knows how to create a folder. I was able to create folders as well. So you are on a great start. Let's continue. Now we're going to focus on each one of those features in turn. Let's start. And you see that was all this step. That's all it was, creating the structure. Now we're going to go to step number 7. And step number 7 is we're going to focus on the footer. The footer will be this. The footer will be just the piece that represents, let me show you. It's just the piece that's going to represent this footer right here. Like people can navigate. It's a part of the web page that maybe people have like links and whatnot. So let's have a team, for example, develop that in isolation. They will build a footer. How do we do that? How do we build a footer for this application? Let's do that. The first thing that you're going to do is locate the folder footer, just like I did, and you're going to create a file called index.html. So I'm going to right-click, new file, index.html. Anybody knows HTML? You know how to create an HTML file? Simple as that. Once you have your index.html, I'm going to have you copy all the things that are in here in step number 7 that represent the footer. The footer is nothing more than just a little bit of HTML and a little bit of CSS, and that we will use it to just represent that portion right there, just the footer. That's exactly what we're going to do. So a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, nothing crazy, nothing too advanced, all good. Now that we have that, now that we have our HTML, we're going to convert this footer into a container. How do you do it? Remember, I mentioned containers require a manifest that tells them how to create themselves. That manifest or that file is called a Docker file. So make sure to locate the same folder called footer, and you're going to be creating a file called Docker file. I can close this because I don't need it. I'm going to right click on footer and create and click new file, call it Docker file. In the Docker file is where you know and you name the things that are required for this container to run. For example, I'm going to copy all the contents of this little chunk of code in here because this is what the Docker file represents. From the top, what we're saying is create a container using as a base image the Nginx image. The Nginx is a very famous, very popular open source web server. So we're going to be running this HTML in a little lightweight web server. Grab the latest version of it and copy all the things that are in the current folder over to the user share Nginx HTML. That's where you should serve all your files from a web server. Then expose the port 80 because it's going to be running on a web server. Expose the port 80 and then execute the daemon in globally in using the daemon off option. So now that you do that, when you execute the container, it's going to do all these things in a sequence, and then it's going to create a container for you. So how do we do that? Let's make sure that we're going to do it now we're going to expand the command line and we're going to do it through there. So let's go through the command line. Let's cd into the footer folder. And if you see, we only have the two files, the Docker file and the index.html. When you create a container, you first have to build an image. Then from the image, you run the image and that generates a container. Here I have the steps on how to do that. So the first thing that you need to do is build an image. How do you build an image? You write the commands docker build -t for tag. You're going to tag this image as footer-img, and then the dot says grab all the local files in this same folder and build me an image out of that using the Docker file that is in the same folder. So I'm going to hit enter. And now you have to authorize the shell because it's going to ask your credentials to do that because it needs permissions to access the system and whatnot and the files. So now the Docker environment, which is already installed in the Google Cloud Shell, just builds you an image. How do you show that the image got built? How do you know that? I don't see anything that it says image. Well, the Docker environment running in the Google Cloud holds that image for you. If you just type Docker images, there it is. There is a footer image, which we just created, and the Nginx image, which got downloaded from the cloud, from the global repository of images, and that copy got downloaded. And then we use that to create our own footer image. Now that we create an image, from the image, now we will build a container. Remember, containers are running instances of an image. The images, there's nothing in the image like the running that you can access. You only can access those things once it runs as a container, and then you will see the application running. So how do you run the image now? How do you run it? First, we build it, but now how do you run it? You scroll down, and then now we're going to run a container based on the footer image that we just created, this one right here. So you use the commands docker run, because you're going to run an image. -d means in detached mode. That way it doesn't hold the command line. -p is to expose a port. So we're going to start exposing a port to the outside, port 8083, map it to the internal port 8080. That way it knows how to talk to the, you can access it from the outside, the stuff that is running inside of the container. And then you name your container in a specific way. So we're going to say, we're going to call this container footer container. But now you have to tell this container which image to run out of. So you just say footer image. The last command is actually the name of the image that we want to create this container against. So you see, it says docker run -d -p 8083. That is the external port. We name our container, and then we give it the image that is going to run against. So we're going to run it. Now we should be able to get a container running on that. How do you know that is actually running? Well, if I say docker ps, which gives me all the running containers in the system, now you will see here that there is a container ID, and then it says based on a particular image. So I have a container already running called footer container, and it says that it's running on port 8083. How do you access now that container? How do you see it that is actually running? Well, the way that you do it here in the Google Cloud is you do this. You can come over here and you can refer to that same port that is available right now for your container 8083. and you can click here where it says web preview. Right next to the terminal, click on web preview. You say change port, and now you put the port on the newly created, on that newly running container, which is 8083. I'm going to click change and preview. And then when that does it, you're going to get now a little tab with the contents of that container already showing through a web browser. Why? Because we're running inside of that container a web server running that index.html that represents the footer. So I'm going to leave it right there. But then you see, we already have now the footer running as a separate container, as a little compartmentalized, as a little encapsulated functionality of this whole application. Let's proceed and do the other parts. So after I do the container, now I'm going to proceed with the next part, which is the shopping cart feature. Now we're going to do the top part, which is this piece right here, remember. So when we go, we already did the footer. Now we're going to do the shopping cart, which is the part that says what's bugging you, and then it's just showing a little shopping cart. So we're going to have another team, let's say, go off and build that feature. You see, these are features that can be developed in isolation without affecting one another. So let's go back again. We're going to build a shopping cart feature. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. But in order to access a couple of the things in Firebase, because now we're going to be actually talking to Firebase in the next section, we have to go back to our Firebase project. We're going to be creating a web application. A web application is nothing more than a configuration that allows you to configure web applications that can talk to Firebase. It's nothing more than a configuration. And then that way, with that configuration, you can put it in your web applications, and it allows you to communicate with Firebase. Very simple. We can do it by doing this. We go to the project, and we click here, Add App. So I'm in step number 8. You can follow the steps. So I'm going to be creating a web application in Firebase. I'm going to click here. I'm going to give it a very, generic name. I'm going to call it e-commerce web app or something like that. E-commerce app. I'm not going to do Firebase hosting because I'm going to be building it as a container. I'm going to click register app. And then if you see down here, there will be, once you do that, it's gonna give you a little bit of configuration. You could install Firebase if you want to, but in my case, I'm gonna keep it very lightweight. So the only thing that I'm gonna need is this configuration. Imagine this configuration as if it was like, for those of you who know SQL, it's kind of like a connection string. This gives you all the information that you need for your web application to connect to Firebase and pull the information from it. In this case, the information in Firebase Cloud Firestore. So I'm going to go continue to console. I can copy this and put it somewhere, but I can access it also through here, through my e-commerce app, and it's down here where you could see like this information right here. So I can just grab this information. So that is the connection string. So after I do that and I build my application, now let's finish the feature of the shopping cart. So let me go now back to the Google Cloud. We're going to be creating now that shopping cart feature. We already have the footer. So let's go to the shopping cart. So inside of the shopping cart folder, we're going to do the same thing. Create an index.html file. Perfect. This is going to represent the shopping cart. Copy all the HTML that is available here, and it's nothing more than just a set of HTML with some CSS and some JavaScript logic that is going to connect to Firebase. I'm going to just do this, a briefly overview of what that is. So this is just a little bit of HTML. You see, it's just a very little bit of HTML. We actually import a couple of the libraries that require, for example, like icons and whatnot. We pull the JavaScript libraries for Firebase so that we can connect to it. And then here, I give you this piece of code that you need to replace it with your own configuration from Firebase. Remember where it was? It's right here. So I'm going to copy this configuration, copy that, bring it right over, and I'm going to paste it right there. That's just the connection that it needs, that your web application needs to connect to Firebase and pull the information from there. Now here, all you need to do is initialize the application with that configuration. You have APIs for reading collections. Remember how I created a collection called orders? And then what I'm doing here is like once I fetch all the information from my collection, from my Firebase store collection, I'm going to parse that information as a JSON object. And then I'm going to create like elements in JavaScript. So this is very straightforward JavaScript, no specific library. This is core JavaScript. Out of those collections, out of those documents inside of the collection called orders, I'm just going to loop through those. And I'm going to create little objects, and then I'm going to create DOM elements, and then I'm going to populate it. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing. So after I do that, I'm going to save my code. The code is already saved. Now let's make sure to create a Docker file. Remember, we're going to be creating a Docker file out of this shopping cart. So let's create a container. First, we're going to create the Docker file. So you're going to right click, new file, Docker file. The Docker file is going to tell me how is it that I'm going to be building a container for this shopping cart, which looks identical to the previous one. It's the same thing, export port 8080, copy all the files, create a little image out of the Nginx web server, and execute the Nginx engine, like execute it with daemon off so that it starts up and then it serves my files. So after everything is saved, now I'm going to run I'm going to first build my image, then create a container out of it. So I'm going to now move this over. I am going to cd into the shopping cart folder. Remember the commands for building an image. You say docker build -t for tagging, and then you tag your image called shopping cart image. You use the dot to say, grab all the files inside of this folder and then build me an image out of this. You can verify that the images is there by just typing docker images, and there is my new image. Now I'm going to build a container out of this image with the same commands as before. Docker run to run a container in detached mode, exposing the port 8081 with the name shopping cart container using the image shopping cart image. So I'm going to hit enter. And this is going to be building a container. If you say docker ps, now you see another container running here, but running on port 8081. Let's see what's running on port 8081. You click here, change port 8081, and let's see what it looks like. So now we see that it even says one. Why? You remember before I added one single order to my collection called orders. That is exactly why, that's the reason why it says one. So if I go back to Firestore database, you see that my orders collection has an orders only one. But now take a look at this. It says what's bugging you has one. But now what if I remove this document? What if I delete this document? Check this out. If I delete the order document, if I just delete it, and then I delete the document, now there's nothing in the orders collection. And if I come back here, it changed to 0. This is the beauty of Firebase Cloud Firestore, the real-time capabilities that when I did something in the backend in the database, it got reflected on the front end. So that is one of the beauties of Firebase Cloud Firestore, the real-time capabilities. We're almost about time to finish. I'm just going to wrap up the next two pieces, and then we should be good. I'm gonna now create the container for the products piece. So we're just gonna go exactly the same way. In the products folder, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna add a new file called index.html. I'm gonna copy the same thing. I'm doing the same thing that I did before. It's nothing different. It's all the same. I'm gonna copy this little HTML that represents the products page. We also have to copy the configuration from Firebase because we want to connect to that. So let's go back again. I'm going to go to my app. I'm going to copy the configuration that will allow me to connect to Firebase from my web app. All I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this. Very simple. And you can see the code. You can inspect it later on. But this is the code that all it does is just retrieves the information from Firebase, loops through them, and then creates a web page out of that, and creates like the little product cards. Same thing as before. I'm going to create a Docker file. I'm going to click new file, I'm going to make it a Docker file. Inside of the Docker file is the same as the previous Docker files, is no different. It's the same thing. After I create a Docker file, I have to build the corresponding image. So I have to build an image out of the products folder. Let me cd into the products folder. Now inside of the products folder, I do the same thing. I build my image. You see how it is? Like you build images and then you run containers out of those images. Simple as that. I'm going to copy now this command. With this command, I will be able to run a container out of my products image. And it's going to be running on port 8082. Same thing as before. Change the port 8082. And then I'm going to click change and preview. And now you will see my products just displaying in the application, just like that. Very simple. You see how now I have the footer, I have the shopping cart, I have the products. Now, how do I assemble it together? That is the last part that we're going to do. And then after that, we'll wrap it up. And you can, again, follow along on this very nice code lab that I put together. Now we're going to bring all the pieces together as a single application. How do we do that? Very, very simple, just like I did before. We're gonna go to the folder called e-commerce. I'm going to be creating a new file called index.html, just like before. But this time, I'm going to need these three URLs because these three URLs are the pieces that are going to be brought together as a single page in a decoupled fashion using this micro front end concept, which is borrowed from microservices, in which you build discrete components that come together as a single unit, building an application like this. And users don't even realize that it's actually three different pieces. So we have the shopping cart up top, the products in the middle, and the footer underneath it. Now, each container injects itself into these regions, and then it brings it together. Very simple. This is how we're going to do it. Inside of the HTML page that I just created, you will see it right here. Look that I have just some HTML and just three iframes, just three simple iframes. Inside of each one of those iframes, all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this URL that is right here. I'm going to bring this whole URL and I'm going to paste it inside of the corresponding iframe. So I want the products right here. I don't need any of this. I only need it up to def. I'm going to need the footer URL. I'm going to copy that, bring it over here. I only need up to the def. And last but not least, I'm going to bring the shopping cart. So the shopping cart is this one above. I'm going to bring it in here. And now you see how each one of these iframes is bringing an application and is displaying it in there. These three applications are running in completely different spaces, three different containers, but now they come together as a single unit. How do we do that? How do we display that now and make it look like a single application? Well, let's build now another container out of our e-commerce. I'm going to add a Docker file. I'm going to bring the same thing. See, it's no different than the others. You know the drill. We're going to build an image out of that e-commerce. So I'm going to cd into my e-commerce folder. I'm going to build an image for that e-commerce. And now that I have the image of that, let me run that image as a container. I'm going to say Docker run and run it as an image on port 8080. I'm going to hit that. My container should be running. And now if I go to port 8080, change and preview. Now you see the whole application come together as a single unit, as if it was a full-blown application. But now you saw how each one of these elements was developed in isolation. But check this out. If you click on one element, you see the shopping cart getting updated. You can click on another one. You see the shopping cart incrementing. I can click on another one, and then you see the shopping cart incrementing. If I click on this like delete little button, I can clear my shopping cart, and all these items also get removed from the shopping cart. All of these, each one of these features can be developed in isolation. Each team can dedicate like its time. It has its own CDI/CD pipeline. They can develop it at their own cadence. But then when they bring it all together, it comes out as a very seamless application. And this is how modern applications get built nowadays. Very decoupled, using the microservices and micro front-end approach, using Docker containers so that they can package the code and their dependencies, as well as using features such as Firebase Cloud Firestore to leverage the real-time capabilities and the great benefits of the Google Cloud. With that, I just wanted to say thank you so much, guys. Please, please, please make sure to try to do this exercise on your own. Make sure to please follow me on Twitter. Check out some of the other videos that I have. But I'm really, really, really happy to share these experiences with everybody so that you know what you can do out there. And a lot of people don't know that they can do stuff for free and they can leverage the Google Cloud right away. So thank you very much. With that, I wrap it up. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to stop sharing.
Well, that was stunning. Really exciting. Thank you, Roman.
Thank you, guys.
You made it very clear. And as a tutorial, it was excellent and really showed off Docker and how simple it is to work with Firebase. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And John, I just wanted to mention, this goes without saying, you were the MVP, the shining star of the Road to Certification cohort at GDG Lawrence. You were amazing. You are the embodiment that hard work, perseverance, and dedication takes you a long way. So kudos to you, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Roman. That's very nice. It's really
All
great.
kudos to you. With such a mentor, no way you'll not succeed.
My pleasure. Yeah. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's very engaging and so clear communicating, so well structured. It's really.
And so just to wrap up, that was our 2022 DevFest. It was really terrific. We heard from the really cool thing with GDELT, and then we listened to Android 13, and now we just got a whole little tutorial on microservices. Really great with Firebase. I want to really thank everyone for coming, and stay tuned. If you haven't already joined our Google development group, please do. There are lots of groups to join, and we will provide lots of great content moving forward. Roman, we need to collaborate and create a new game for us to play.
Definitely. Thank you. Please
I want to invite everybody to join us when we do.
Definitely.
All right, Yulia, you're muted, Yulia.
That's what we had today. It was whole day of amazing talks and panels, and it was wrapped with Roman. He is the best. I'm really, really, really thankful for having you by our side, and thank you everyone to make it possible.
Kudos. Yeah, and for those of you who stayed through the whole thing, good job. We did lose some people during Nav's talk, but we really saved the best for last, which was Roman. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, and with that, we conclude our day. Anything else you want to say, Yulia, before we sign off?
I think it's late now and everyone is exhausted, but we will have the recording up on YouTube, and please rewatch, revisit, and such. Just enjoy. That's really huge appreciation to the community collaboration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So with that, we sign off. Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll see you all online. Bye.